This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 752, brought to you by Mac Weldon. Go to macweldon.com/iFanboy for 20% off your first order. And iFanboy listeners, just like you, washing your hands, wearing your masks, helping people out. Thank you. Welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 752. I'm Josh Flanagan. I'm here with my co-host, Connor Kilpatrick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are Good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
We are iFanboy, and every week we read our stack of comics, and one of us picks the one that they like the best, and we call that the Pick of the Week. We talk about that book. We will talk about many comic books from the week, if that's necessary. The Patron Pick and some listener mail if we have time. The goal here is joy. The goal is joy. That's what we're about.
Do we ever achieve joy? Possibly not, but that's always the goal.
I think we touch at joy. You know, like if you're a kid or in fact an adult of a certain height, and you want to reach up and touch the basketball rim,
but you can't.
I touched the bottom of the rim one time in my life, like the metal part that holds
jumping?
it up. I got to that. Yeah. I could get the net though. When I hit the net, that was like, well, this is the best I can do. That net is joy. We brush against it. You can't hang up there. I have once. I reached up and I grabbed it and I held onto that net. And even then, you only got so long before your fingers are like, no, this isn't going to work for us.
Right.
But you were there.
Sure.
That net is life and joy. There's your very weak metaphor for the morning. Connor, you had the pick. Let's move along. A lot of comics.
I did have the pick, and there was a lot of comics. I think I read nearly 25 books this week.
I really didn't feel like I had that many.
I just had a lot. I posted my pull list at the beginning of the week to our Patron Discord. We have a pull list channel in there. And it changed drastically since the time I posted it to the time I finished reading. I was like, oh, I forgot about this book and this book and this book. And by the time I finished reading, it was 25 books or so. But the pick of the week was DCeased, Dead Planet number 4, Tom Taylor, Trevor Hairsine, Gigi Baldacini, Rain Barreto, Saida Timofonte. Yep, DCeased again. Yep, it was an easy choice.
I texted Connor. I think I'd read 2 books. I think this was the second book I read. And I was like, did you finish your books? And you're like, I read most of them. I was like, did you read DCeased? And you're like, yeah, that's probably going to be it. Because I was like, you know, when it's it, it's it.
There was 2 issues this week. There was this one, and then there was the digital one, which we'll talk about right after this one. I was thinking after finishing this issue, which was, I mean, honestly, head and shoulders above everything else I read this week. There was some other good books, and there was some ones that for a while I thought might be the pick. I read this one, I think, last, or maybe almost last. You know, when we first read DCeased, the original miniseries, it was a surprise for us. I don't remember if it was the Patron Pick or what. It was a surprise. And
it was.
We really loved it. When it was over, it was this nice little Elseworlds miniseries that told the tale of the sort of final days of the DC universe, and that was great. And then they announced a sequel, and we were like, oh no, they're going to ruin it. But instead of ruining it, what they've done is they've created this really epic, sprawling tale. It's really become this big, big story with a lot of characters. You know, the first miniseries pretty focused on a small group of DC characters. But now in this issue, we go out to New Genesis and Apocalypse, and we've got the New Gods involved now.
We're spanning the DC universe.
It's become what events used to feel like, which is this epic tale of the entire universe, and it feels important, and there are stakes. And we talked about it before, but what's great is there are actual stakes. We don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah. And also, there's no confusion about which character is which, because he's writing everything,
right? And
he's chosen whatever version of the character he most wants to have. Right. So this is this version of Harley Quinn and this version of the New Gods, and that's important.
And this version of Mr. Miracle that is basically the Tom King version, at least,
which I found really interesting. Yeah. I was like, oh, he's leaning into that, which is cool.
Yeah. So here, you know, in the past, they got a message from Cyborg, who had been left on the planet. The surviving heroes had left with the surviving humans and gone to another planet. And they got a message from Cyborg to come back because there was a cure, and they found his head. And, you know, he said there was a cure inside of him. And so they figured out through the course of this miniseries that to unlock the cure, they need to use the technology of New Genesis. So they get a boom tube and they go. And here, it's sort of that gathering the troops. They had retrieved Mr. Miracle. He's got the beard. He's angry because Bart is dead. And they end up taking him to New Genesis, where he does not have a great relationship with everybody anymore, with Light Ray and Orion and Highfather.
Shut up, Light Ray. He had no time for him.
There's a big revelation at the end, because before, I'm going to get to Metron in a second, before Apocalypse had been wiped out, you know, it's a bunch of floating rocks, kind of like Krypton, and then here, by the end, it sort of reforms itself as the Apocalyptians become zombies, and it ends in a pretty major cliffhanger.
And again, those are the stakes. So this happens in a regular comic book, and I go, all right, that'll be the thing now. That happens in this comic, and I think, oh, that's going to change things.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah, it's very bad.
Who knows how this story ends, and who knows if it even ends here?
Well,
it could keep going.
Well, what's interesting to me about this issue there, where it became clear to me, is the whole time in this series they've been talking about a cure. Mm-hmm. And this seems like, wow, you know what, actually, the original one is, oh, that's really sad. The first miniseries, like, oh, that, you know, like, and they all lose. That's what this story is. And you can do that in the Elseworlds thing. Then when we come back to it, no, they might not lose. And then I go, oh, man, you know what? This is a superhero story. Mm-hmm. Maybe it isn't actually going to be as subversive as it seems. Maybe it tricked us, and they come out in the end, which is an interesting thing, because then it's different than what I had assumed it was all along. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but it makes me think again that there are stakes. I don't know what is going to happen. I can't predict it. You can predict what's going to happen in every comic book story out there, other than one or two turns of a character or something like that. You know how it's going to end. When I watch movies with my kids, they'll get nervous about a part, and I'll go, the good guys win. Right. They always do. You don't have to worry about that. And for a little while, this felt like this was not that. And I just like that supposition is in jeopardy, I guess.
And even if they win, it's going to be sad, because
yes,
you can't cure Batman. He's a bunch of bones, you know, like so they're going to have losses no matter what. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be like a neat and tidy ending where they're all happily walking off into the sunset. But here, I actually really like the scene with, and this is actually a good scene to talk about what you just talked about, where they have to find Metron's chair, because Metron's chair will power Cyborg's new body and give him the proper knowledge to figure out how to get the cure out of his body and implement it. And so they finally get Metron. At first they try to beat him. A bunch of them try to like grab him and get him out of the chair. And also, it was interesting that they made him like giant. He's not human sized. He's like, oh yeah, he's like human size and a half.
Metron is one of those characters that they don't use him a lot, but he's got a ton of weight to him. Yep. Not physically, but you know, he's a lot of things. And I think reading those Jack Kirby comics that we did relatively recently sort of put that into perspective. He's kind of a fun tool to be able to pull out.
Yeah, and so then they try to beat him up and they can't. And he's like, I don't really care if you all die. I'm leaving. And Mary Marvel has become a major part of the story after being introduced in Unkillables. Says, if we all die, so will all knowledge, and you won't have anything to collect anymore. So he goes, good point. Gets up, and Cyborg sits down. And I always love when characters sit in the Metron chair, because they get like the ultimate knowledge, and there's always some creepy foreboding. And Cyborg does not like what he sees, even though he does get the idea for the cure. And then Metron sees the future and bolts. Fuck this. So something bad's coming.
This is a comic book trope I've realized is it starts way back. I mean, it's probably earlier than this, but the earliest one that I can think of is Hawkeye in the closet. Whatever he saw in there was some serious shit. Right. So much so that no one ever talked about it again. It just happened over in Thor, where Thor saw some shit and it was like, whoa. It's just happened here. I like that, but I think that the Bendis method of just never mentioning is the best way to go, because it can never live up to that. It's the inside of Marcellus Wallace's briefcase. Yeah, it's you don't want that.
Metron sees the future via the crystal ball they got from Madame Xanadu. That was the trade-off. If you leave the chair, you can look into the future, and so he does. And he sees, and he says, "I can't be here. I must leave now." Gets in the chair and leaves. So that's bad. So if he saw the thing at the end, which I'm not going to spoil, but who knows what it was. But it could be, that would be great. If they never mention it again, that means it could be anything. It could be the thing at the end. It could be, who knows. But, you know, there are certain people who are not thrilled we keep picking these books. But the thing is, this is the best comic reading right now for me. Like these DCeased books. This story that Tom Taylor's created, this epic, sprawling tale, is the most enjoyable weekly comic reading that I do. Yeah. To me, there's nothing that touches it, especially when the main book comes out, which Trevor Hairsine draws, and he's terrific. Yeah,
that's a good point.
It's really fun.
It's funny because none of this was even a zombie book. If you take it out of the context of that, it's a Justice League, B-team adventure on New Genesis.
Right. Yeah.
It's great.
The characterizations are great. The art's terrific. I know Hairsine may not be for everybody, but I think he's a great artist.
It is. It just works. It works perfectly with this story. It's one of those things like you might not love his stuff over on some other book or whatever, but for this, like he's now part of it. It's ingrained in what this story is, and so when he's on it, you're like, oh, we're on the main path now, and these are the two guys doing it.
And he gets to really play with relationships because we're slightly in the future. The sidekicks are older. You know, there's all kinds of different pairings going on. You know, Damian Batman is with Cassie Wonder Woman, and they're funny together. Damian's a very different Batman, and so there's all kinds of fun stakes to have here. You know, Superman Jonathan, turns out he's even stronger than his dad, and so now he's even more formidable as a weapon. Introducing the new gods never hurts the story. It only makes the story better.
Yeah, and they're not overused too much.
Right.
You know, so look, when they introduce it, and I will be honest, having context in the new gods probably helps a lot. So if you're a person who's reading comics and then they show up and you're like, I don't know what any of this is, I think it is worth your while to read some of the new gods stuff. Mm-hmm. And then that puts all this DC Universe stuff in greater context because A, those are fun, enjoyable stories, and B, it will make these kinds of stories more enjoyable.
Well, as a kid, you know, they came back in the 80s with the superpowers toys because they needed villains. And then they were sort of brought back into the fold of stories, and it became a signifier of a major thing. You know, like the Watcher showing up in Marvel stories used to be a signifier of a major thing. It used to be that when the new god showed up, it was like a big deal. This was like a serious story. And that sort of lost its way for a while, but I feel like in this particular point of this particular story, that's what that means. You know, where we've reached a turning point in the story where it's a big deal that they're in.
Well, for a little while, they did the Joker thing with Darkseid. Like, he was around too much.
Right.
He was the big bad for a while, which is good because he's one of the only people who's actually, you know, formidable for Superman, but it was too much. They made him unspecial, so I think you're right.
And so between the characterization, the terrific art, people often refer to the 4th issue of a 6-issue miniseries as the Empire Strikes Back part. You know, it's at the end of Act 2. Yeah. So things are looking rough right now for the heroes. And so that's a really great issue most of the time. I just revel in the characterizations. I revel in the art. I revel in the entire epic tale being told here. We're now into the 4th miniseries. Our fears did not come true. In fact, the story only got better and more interesting. I mean, clearly it's selling well enough to justify 4 miniseries. So, again, because we're comic book readers, I hope this doesn't mean that eventually it gets diluted. But for right now, Tom Taylor has really crafted a really epic DC story.
Well, I think it works. It works like, you know, read the first League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Right.
Great. You know, read the slowly descending ones that follow it. Right. You know, but don't worry about those if you don't like them.
Right.
You know, whatever the one with the 3D glasses was, all right, that's a little side project. That first one, though.
Was that Black Dossier?
Perfect. Yes, I think so. The top shelf one.
Yeah. So then we go back in time with DCeased Hope at World's End 11, which I believe must be the second to last issue, or the digital issue anyway, which will equal about 6 full issues. Here we're back on Earth, you know, during the breakout time with most of the sidekicks. It's mostly been about Damian newly as Batman, Jonathan newly as Superman, Cassie newly as Wonder Woman, and Stephanie Brown is now Robin. And there's other characters around, Blue Beetle and Talia, Hawkman, things like that. But they're fighting off Black Adam. They have a small group of humans, survivors on the island of Nantucket, and there's sort of a sanctuary there. And then, of course, Black Adam shows up with his zombie Atom Smasher and Hawkman to take them out. And so there's a big battle. And I just keep waiting for the other shoe to drop literally onto Stephanie, because she hasn't been seen at all in the other books. And there's one point here where it looks like she's going to get, smashed by Atom Smasher, and I was like, oh, here it is, and then it doesn't happen. So they keep teasing it out. This was super fun, and this art. This issue was by Danielle Di Nicciolo, who did the Boom book that Tom Taylor's writing.
Oh, right.
7 Secrets. She's been the artist in that, so this is her.
Okay.
Jumping in here. Jimmy Olsen gets injured. He loses his eye. That's what we've seen in the future. He's got an eye patch. This was also really fun. This is the fun action side of the story. I like this team of sidekicks now as the main heroes together. They're fun. They
are fun together, and it really has a next generation feel in a way that a lot of the next generation heroes haven't really worked out in a lot of places.
It has a legacy DC feel that DC used to be known for. You know, like even if this is like an Elseworlds tale, this is like the next generation. And listen, I don't love Damian, but he works here as Batman.
Oh yeah, totally. Black Adam's a really fun villain because he's got that Doom thing, but also it's more like Doom as Superman, kind of, which is, I guess, odd, but it's different than that. But they've all got to work together. You know, there's a bit like, Jamie, can Black Adam crack your armor? I hope not. You know, like that's like, all right, here we go. That fun action movie thing where you're reluctant, but you've got to do it anyway.
And the stakes are super high because, you know, most likely they will all lose to him now at the end.
Yeah.
You know, at the end, Jonathan calls for help and his dad shows up. So obviously, that's
let's also not forget. let's not forget the historic impact of losing all the Jaws shooting locations.
Right, there you go.
Because it takes place on the island of Nantucket. And, you know, Wings. There was Wings. By the way, brief aside, I saw Steven Weber in something the other day, and I thought, how come that guy hasn't aged?
Yeah.
And then also the other dude hasn't aged. So
really? What were they drinking on the set of Wings?
I don't know. It was something good. It had guarana, whatever that is.
Jaws didn't take place on Nantucket. It took place in Amity.
Nope. Yeah, but it was shot there.
I know, but it didn't take place there.
I know, but I said shooting location.
All right.
Listen.
And so there's a sense of, you know, these kids can't win. It's a losing battle against Black Adam because he is, like you said, Superman. So then, as he's pounding on Jonathan, he's able to call for Dad, and Dad is Superman half a world away, and he shows up very, very quickly.
Yeah, you thought that he showed up quickly for Lois. Like this is a whole other level.
Or it reminded me a lot of, oh God, that great series, this Green Arrow, Black Canary, when Oliver called for Superman when Connor got shot, as it turns out, by Darkseid.
Yeah.
That reminded me of that moment where he calls for help and Clark, bolts there. This was
also in terms of a comic book page turn, and these are the half pages, so I don't know how they'll set it up in the end. These 2 panels on the page is Dad, his reaction, and I guess that's Lois next to him. I can't tell because. Yeah. And the next panel is him making contact with Black Adam.
Yeah.
Like as you flip the page. And I love that. That's a really nice bit of comic book pacing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's always important to recognize that the medium does really well.
I read these back to back. They're terrific. This is classic yet modern DC. It feels timeless. It feels epic. I mean, once these are all done, whenever these are all done, this is going to be one epic omnibus tale of DC. It's been my favorite thing in regular Wednesday comics for a while now. And
I mean, I know it's going to be one whole book, but it's really fun to read serialized like this. I mean, this is what serialized comics are supposed to feel like.
And out of order, honestly. It's kind of bizarre, but like reading DCeased, Dead Planet, and then reading Hope at World's End, where they take place totally different times in the story, so it's fun.
Yeah, but they're also they're being done as issues.
Yeah.
The issues are paced like issues. It is not a chapter it is a chapter in a book, but you know what I'm saying? Like each issue has its own stakes and rise and fall and cliffhanger, and this is good old comics.
He can play with our expectations because he's doing it out of order. Because like I said, we expect certain people to not be around anymore, and so we know they're in jeopardy, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But
that's a high wire act, my friend.
He's very good. Tom Taylor should be getting bigger. I mean, I guess this is really popular and sells a lot, so maybe he doesn't need it, but he should be moving up. Yeah,
if I'm him, I don't know that I want to go deal with the continuity of everything or with the different moves that happen. I'm thinking right now, I was like, put him on Superman.
Yeah.
Put that dude on Superman. And then I thought, I just talked to Gene Yang on our Talk Split. We'll talk about that. And he was talking about how hard it was.
Right.
That, your plans are constantly shifting and moving. And it really, honestly, I've talked to a lot of comic people. What that really put it into perspective about just sort of how difficult it is to get a good story out of that when you're, constantly trying to move with the whole team.
Oh, it takes,
and he doesn't have to do that here.
That's a different skill altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
Being able to write a great story within the confines of the continuity constraints. But let's talk about Thor number 8. Donny Cates, Aaron Cooder, Matt Wilson, Joe Sabino. This was my probably runner-up pick of the week until I read DCeased. I was like, well, that was great. This is probably the pick. And then I read DCeased, and I was like, well, never mind. But this was part 2 of the little 2-part story, Hammerfall, in which Thor decides he's going to throw Mjolnir to Earth because it's feeling lighter and lighter, and he, as we talked about last time, an old ex-con garage guy picks it up and becomes Adam, and Tony Stark shows up, and there's a whole big mess. I love, obviously, the Aaron Cooder art is great. I love his sort of floppy-haired, walrus-mustached Tony, because he doesn't look cool and hip. He looks like a gym teacher. And there's the one scene where he's like on page 12 of your digital reader, where he does not look cool, which I think is great.
Yeah.
What I liked about this issue a lot was Tony and Thor have a conflict. But then by the end of it, they're like, are you good? I love you. Be safe. Like, they're like brothers. They had like a brief moment of, getting mad at each other. Tony hits Thor with the hammer, but that's not going to hurt him really. And then at the end of it, it's not like this is like an ongoing blood feud now. It's more like, you good? I worry about you. You know, so that felt very real to me in terms of two guys who've been Avengers together for however many years.
And also, if you think about it, like in terms of, like, wow, but he really whacked him with the hammer or whatever, and they're threatening each other. Like, well, they wouldn't do that. They're friends. These are people who use violence all the time, right. Earth-shattering, monumental violence, and they also understand, kind of implicitly too, like, I can't hurt this guy. He's a god, so you can really get frustrated. You ever want to just beat the shit out of your friend? Well, they can try it. Like, it'll be fine. And they don't. You're right. I like that at the end there. It's not a blood feud. That's a really good point. I don't think I had seized on that.
I wouldn't have liked it if it had ended and they were like, next time, Tony. Like, I would have been probably pissed. But because they ended it and they were like, I love you, basically, I hope you're okay. I'm glad this all worked out. I was like, okay, well, Donny Cates understands that these guys are really, really close. And like you said, they use a lot of violence. And so by the end, they're like, we're friends. And we just worked out our little conflict. I also, again, like you said, Tony attacks Thor. And Thor's like, you could do whatever you want. I'm a fucking god. And he lays down the law with his godliness. And that was also, good. And that's sort of, like, that leads to their reconciliation. Like Tony's like, yeah, never mind.
I really like the page after that. So he's like, I am a god and you are a tin man. And then just off to the side is that other dude like, oh shit, what am I getting out of here? This is awkward.
And then there's a very sort of sweet ending where he takes this dude flying because he said, if you pick up this hammer, you have the power of Thor, and he picks it up. And so this guy gets like a couple hours to be Thor. He tries to learn to fly, learn to land, learns to, spin the hammer, and then he turns back into his old self, and he, drops the seed in Thor's head that he needs to have another life as well as Thor. So then I guess we're gonna have the return of Donald Blake as teaser.
Love Donald Blake.
So
it is great to have Thor go into that for a while. Those are fun stories.
This has been a nice, really, really nice resetting of Thor. This 8 issues so far. Mm-hmm. It's been really terrific. The art in this, Aaron Kuder's terrific. I love this costume design. I know I often hate the costumes and everyone makes fun of me, but I actually really like this Thor design. I like the sort of rune on his chest. Yeah. It's very Norse. And it recalls was it Ariel? No, Ariel Olivetti. Who designed this? The JMS one.
I think it was Ariel Olivetti.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean, he did the covers and everything. I'm not sure, but I know what you mean, and I love that costume.
The pants recall it. Mm-hmm. He's got the giant circles on his chest, so that sort of recalls the original one. So it's a nice little mix between the two.
He's got the knee things. As long as he's got the knee things, I'm fine. And don't really fuck with the helmet too much. And that's kind of the key. It's like all the Captain America suits. The thing that bugs me the most is when they fuck with the top part, the helmet, ears, the hood, the whatever it is. Yeah, just all that. Like, don't mess with that part. That's the part that you need to see.
It's iconic.
But as long as this has all the basic shapes that Thor's costume is supposed to have, I'm okay with it usually.
The silhouette, as they say in the fashion world.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific little issue. Terrific little 2-part story. Great interpersonal stuff between Thor and Tony. Nice, sweet ending. And Donald Blake. So Nick Kleiner comes back next issue to kick off a brand new arc. Did you read Getting It Together from Image Comics from Sina Grace, Omar Spaki, Jenny D. Fine? I have 2 thoughts.
Go on.
I'm of 2 minds. I really loved reading it. When's the last time you just read a comic like this?
Oh, my God. What's funny is that I had not known it was coming. It's a thing. I saw you put it on the list, so I checked it out. And all I read, I didn't look at the creators. I know Cena. I like Cena. I looked at the blurb, and I was just like, oh, it's this. I haven't seen a story like this in forever.
Like, when's the last time you read a book from a major publisher that was just a slice of life story about people?
Yeah, and their everyday drama.
I couldn't remember when the last time I read one of those was. I mean, Image doesn't really do that anymore, unless it's from somebody like Cena who has a long history with the company.
Right.
Now, that said, I feel like I'm not cool enough to read this book.
I feel old as shit. Yeah. And I don't know if this is all just millennial / whatever the people after them are, Gen Z jargon.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And like some of it felt very genuine, and some of it felt like a jargon. Like this will be what. And Cena's not much younger than us, so
yeah. But he's probably more plugged into different lifestyle than we are.
He's running in different circles, and that's fine. So I'd say it felt 80% genuine, and then a little more. I mean, but that's.
I'm not prepared to say any of it's not genuine. I'm assuming his life is much different than Mars. I'm sure he's up on all the slang that we're not up on.
Sure. But some of it was a little heightened, like, what's her name? Like the Gilmore Girls writer. You know, like it's just a little lifted, a little Joss Whedon-y, which is fine. That's how people, Kevin Smith. I'm using all late 90s references, but still. But they invented that kind of dialogue as far as I'm concerned. And it was a bit of that. So even the words were different. The tone, I get. The tone, I understand. But yes, I felt old.
Yeah, I mean, it was, even in my 20s, I did not live this much of a go-go lifestyle, and I was out a lot. But, I mean, I was like, wow, is this what's going on now?
Hey, you know what? Yes. I mean, I know that the basic moves of that are probably mostly true. The thing that sealed it for me at the end, though, the thing that I really liked is, basically you got a guy and he's devastated about losing his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason for that is because they decided to have an open relationship, and people didn't have these conversations when we were young. This is a now thing, which is fine. And she's in a band, and the girl's brother is the guy's best friend. And so he's working as the in-between. Meanwhile, he's having, romps and relationships on his own. And then the end bit, you think you know what's going to happen, that like he's going to go beat up the guy that she slept with because he's also in her band. And he just doesn't. He just asks for a hug. And it doesn't mean it's all resolved or whatever. It's just kind of sweet. And then his friend's like, you did a good job. And then again, friend says, I love you. And he's like, I love you too. You can get away with a lot of stuff if it's a story about characters who really care about each other, and all that. That's all that matters. Like it's characters that care about each other and they're going through shit together. That always makes good stories, I think.
I will say that what I thought about later was there wasn't a lot of tension because everyone was sort of relentlessly positive in the way that this generation is parodied as. Everyone was the best version of themselves. Everyone was super sex positive. Everyone was super relationship positive. The only tension really was this guy got his heart broken. Then the main character met a guy on Tinder. They had sex, and then the guy started like stealing the stuff. Which I get. I realized these are regular lives, so the stakes are smaller. Mm-hmm. But everyone was the best version of themselves, so that it makes it hard to have real interpersonal conflict when everyone is the best. Do you know what I mean?
Let me take it this way, though. If this is the first issue of I don't know how many, this gives you a chance to get a read on the characters so that you know you're dealing with as you move forward.
Sure.
And so when shit starts to get harder or worse, and let's if I am writing this, and I think that you make a very good point, is the best version of themselves and everybody's positive or whatever, that is a veneer. I mean, it not everybody can be like that. That means there's something going on underneath. And if you find a way to do this story where those things come together and the suppositions about how people are challenged in way, like there's ways to make that work, I think. And that could be very interesting. And I think I've seen enough of Cena's work in both his own stuff and, even over on Iceman. Like he knows what to do.
Mm-hmm. No, he's a good writer.
Yep.
I'm definitely going to read more, although I didn't like feeling so old.
I mean, that's just how it's going to be. I want a story. Honestly, I want a story like this about 40-year-old people. I mean, the last one I read was the Alex Robinson book. It's over there. I'm in it. Our Expanding Universe.
Right.
That was the closest that I can think of. And those people were really all in their 30s, but
no one wants to read that.
Well, I do. It was exactly what I wanted. When I was 20, I read Box Office Boys, and then when I was, 38, I read that book, and no one tells these stories anymore.
Yeah. Except
the Duplass brothers in movies and TV shows, but it's still not exactly, the same thing that slice of life stuff is interesting, man. And TV tends to over dramatize it, and it's a thing that comics have always done really well.
Jenny Fine's art is terrific. Really, really, really terrific.
Yeah, it worked.
This is a good.
Apparently, according to this, she's an illustrator, not a comic book person.
Well, she learned storytelling pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that was really fun, even if,
I think we made it clear.
Now, did you check out American Ronin #1?
I did.
From Pete Milligan and ACO And this was published by, as I open up in my iPad, which is having problems.
Upshot.
I better pull.
It's Upshot.
Pull the
It's
cord.
which is the company started by Axel Alonso and Bill Jemis, I believe. So I will begin.
Yeah, you begin because my app just crashed.
You may remember ACO or ACO, or I don't know how you
terrific.
pronounce it. From what was the? It was a Nick Fury mini that James Robinson wrote, and the story of that book was largely that. Wow, look at this!
Yeah,
look at this swirling scene of buildings and stuff and movement. It was like J.H. Williams III meets, who's that guy? American Shaolin? Jeff Darrow. It was like a lot at the same time and very impressive. And I think that same guy was on show here. And it was quite a thing to look at.
This publisher is AWA Studios.
Really?
Yeah.
But Upshot is the...
I don't know what that is.
Upshot is Axel Alonso and Bill Jemis. Okay. I'm 98% sure of it. Great cover. Beautiful cover. Striking colors and everything. And you got Pete Milligan, who did the great final run on Hellblazer and many, many things before that, and has done a lot of books. I've liked some of them. I haven't liked others. What was that series he did with Leandro Fernandez for Vertigo before it was over? There was a great series there. I didn't love the story.
Well, it's almost like a less dystopian version of Lazarus. It's very close. The story here is that mega corporations, really run the world, and each mega corporation has its own genetically enhanced soldier, which sounds a lot like Lazarus and its genetically enhanced Lazari. Where there it's the families who started off as corporations, I guess, and then that became way more like dystopian. This is a world that's pretty much recognizable to ours, except for the fact that behind the scenes, the mega corporations really run everything, and they all have their soldier. I read that and I was like, this is like the early days of Lazarus, right? I mean, it's very close. It's a very specific story. And so here it's mostly about this one guy, this American Ronin, the American version of whatever they're called. I don't remember what the names were. Tracking down this one head of a company, tracking him the whole issue, and then finally killing him. And his power is that he has like super empathy. If he can get
some of their DNA,
yeah, he can inject your DNA into his body, and he knows your memories, your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, your dreams. And then he can amplify that back to you and make you do what he wants you to do. And here he gets the CEO to kill himself. And like, it wasn't a bad comic. The art helped a lot, but it was just bizarrely so similar to Lazarus that I felt weird about reading it.
I will tell you, I didn't even put that together. Only I didn't catch the part about there being super soldiers for each corporation. I was looking at it in terms of like there's a upper ruling class, and this guy who has some sort of power is against it.
I think I read that in I looked up the issue.
Okay. I don't know that was
in the summary, if you look in the summary, the war is over, democracy is an illusion, real power now lies not with nation states but with huge corporations engaged in a silent war for global domination. Their number one weapon, highly skilled, technologically enhanced operatives trained since childhood to pledge their allegiance to the corporate flag.
See, I caught all that stuff, but I hadn't put it in the context of that other thing. Like they were trained from age 10 to protect the guy, and I was like, all right, so they're really rich people. I mean, basically, that's the way that I looked at it. Because, the idea that corporations and the rich people are the ones who rule in the world, that doesn't mean it has to be a dystopian future. That's right now.
Right.
And so, you put all that other stuff around it. It was very hyper stylized in a way that comics of a certain generation are. It's not necessarily bad, but it's very... I picture a very loud soundtrack, in a part of a Guy Ritchie movie where there's a lot of shit happening and it's pounding at you and they're moving around and it's really interesting, but there wasn't a quiet moment to sort of grab onto. Maybe like the main character guy, I don't know anything about him. I don't care anything about him. The corporation dude that he's going after, that's a cipher. Like, we don't need to, we get what he is, but it's not a character that we had to know anything about for it to happen. So what happens to him doesn't matter. It's prey. And it's a lot. It's a very sensory overload sort of situation. And then another bad guy comes along and he has weird red glasses.
Well, he's one of the other soldiers now.
I know. But the point is just overall, that's fine. But outside of the art, it didn't really stand out as anything.
I thought it was a very well done comic book.
If you want this type of comic book.
Milligan and ACO are talents. I have no complaints about the actual book itself. It just felt very bizarrely very similar to a book that's already been out that we like a lot. And I realize that a lot of superhero books are the same as other superhero books, but this is very similar to another book out there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, he's just not aware of it, but shouldn't his editorial team be aware?
Okay. But, AWA is the Artists and Writers Artisans. Mm-hmm. And I guess Upshot is a line of those. Chief Creative Officer Axel Alonso, Chief Executive Officer Bill Jemis, and then someone named John Miller is the board chair. Their creative council is, we're going to be all over the place here, so I need you to just hang tight. Mm-hmm. Straczynski, Reginald Hudlin, Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis is the only one without a professional photo here because he's holding a pint glass and shooting it from below. Greg Hurwitz, whose name I remember, but he's a TV guy who did comics.
Sounds like
Margaret Stoll, and of course Frank Cho.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like the late 90s. We're like, hold on. Late 90s Vertigo and Marvel came through and tried to do a thing. I remember I got a thing in the mail once. It was like a big black and white sort of catalog that had bits and pieces of their stuff. They want to fix our profoundly broken industry, make a lot of money, and have a lot of fun. That's their mission. Okay. So there you go.
So I assume you won't be checking out issue 2 then?
I don't know. Probably not. I think it's interesting for a lot of ways. Also, a new publisher trying to it's one thing for us to say, listen, Axel Alonso has made a lot of real good comics, mostly from 94 to 2000. But Axel Alonso and Garth Ennis somewhere on the same team. I'm gonna watch that publisher.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you will. Maybe you won't.
What you're not gonna watch is anything that has to do with the physical representation of my Mack Weldon underwear, but I will talk about them.
You're not going to send out any product shots of you modeling the underwear to Instagram?
No one wants any of that, mostly me. But what you need to know is that I feel good.
Yeah.
And that's really the important thing, because Mack Weldon is better than whatever it is you're wearing right now. It's a premium men's essentials brand. They believe in smart designs and premium fabrics. I can back those things up. Mack Weldon offers industry-leading underwear, but they're much more than just that. They are a one-stop shop for men's basics of all kinds. You've got socks, shirts, hoodies, underwear, Vesper polos in 4-way active shorts. They're the longest-lasting, highest-quality items on the market today. It's good stuff. You've got really comfortable stuff. You have silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, which means they don't get as stinky. They want you to be comfortable. If you do not like your first pair of underwear, you do not like them, you go, you purchase them, I put these on, these are not going to work for me, they will refund you. Keep the underwear, no questions asked, that's it, but you would be doing yourself a disservice is what I'm saying. Not only do they have the socks, shirts, underwear, they perform really well. It's good for all of the things you do, working out, going places, or just being at home all the time. Because really, it starts at that base layer. Right. If you're going to be comfortable being at home all the time, and then you can build out from there where there's other stuff they can put there. So, Connor, what are you wearing?
Well,
what are you wearing right now?
It's great. Well, did some laundry earlier in the week, so I had 2 days in a row Mack Weldon underwear post laundry days. But the thing is, we don't go anywhere, so not wearing a ton of underwear.
Hello.
Not going out. What
you don't wear underwear if you're at home?
No, I wear throw on some gym shorts.
That's not underwear, though.
Right, exactly. What do I need underwear for? I'm not going anywhere. So I wear a lot of the Mack Weldon shorts that I bought recently. I wear the gym shorts, and I have a really comfortable pair of swimsuits that sometimes I'll just throw on a swimsuit. Huh. When it's really hot. You want fewer layers, but you still want to be comfortable and look stylish. So
sure.
That's what I do.
All right, that's a good time.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand.
You're a weirdo who gets fully dressed every day.
I do, immediately. I get dressed. I find the clothes that I would want to be in if I was going somewhere. I don't like not getting dressed. Also, it's winter, so I get to put clothes on. It's we're getting into sort of cold weather, so I get to put clothes on, which I'm excited about. I wear shoes all the time. I'm into that.
You're strange.
Well, you say that a lot, but usually it just means I'm different than you.
No, it's strange to wear shoes in their house every day. That's strange. Be strange. Embrace it.
I have to. Also, it helps my plantar fasciitis. Anyway. Those socks don't do anything for that. I'm not going to make that claim. That has nothing to do with that. But I did get a bunch of stuff recently, and when they're new, I'm like, I can't wait. I'm like, oh, I've gone through the new ones in the cycle. I have no not Mack Weldon underwear at this point. I don't know if I've made that clear.
You cycled it all through.
I went all in, and they seem to be lasting longer than all the other stuff I've had, so that's fine. Last night I got to wear my Ace sweatpants because it was perfect for it. It's all good. I haven't used the radius pant in a while, but it's getting to be that time of year, so I just pulled those out too.
There you
It's
go.
a good time.
You can enjoy the full complement of Matt Weldon gear as it gets cooler.
I could, let's see, I could theoretically do socks, pants, underwear, and shirt. And then I also have a little accessory bag that I got from them, so I could carry that around with my toiletries.
You should do that one day. Then take a photo of that.
That's okay, yeah. And maybe I'll do one little sexy photo where I pull down the edge of my... No? Okay.
Let's not do that.
The people at Mack Weldon have created their own totally free loyalty program, which, by the way, makes it easier to make all those changes in your wardrobe if you want to go through there and get the premium stuff. Level 1, which is your first order, gives you free shipping for life. And once you reach level 2 by spending $200, Mack Weldon will start giving you 20% off every order for the next year. Pretty great. 20% off your first order. You don't have to do any of that. Just the first one in. Go to MackWeldon.com/iFanboy and enter the promo code iFanboy. I cannot emphasize enough how you have to do those 2 steps at the end. Don't just go in there willy-nilly and not get your 20% off.
No.
You get your 20% off, but specifically use the promo code iFanboy at MackWeldon.com/iFanboy. And obviously you people are doing that because they keep coming back and asking us to talk about it more, which we're always excited to do because it's good stuff.
So thank you.
Batman 100.
Yeah, we got a lot of comments to talk about. So our long national nightmare is over. The Joker War's done with Batman 100. I wanted to mention it because, again, I mean, Jorge Jimenez is just doing career work in this storyline, and I think he's going to continue on the book from what he said online. There was a lot of really fun scenes in which sort of the Bat family has gotten back together. You know, Nightwing is back. He's back from his brain injury. Or his hypnotosis. That's what I was about to say, which is not a word, but that was what was coming out. And Barbara takes up not the mantle, but the position of Oracle to help coordinate. So you've got a very classic Batman feel here where she's coordinating the teams and he's running around and they're flirting through the comms. And then you've got, you know, Tim and Jason and the Signal. No one cares about the Signal. And Stephanie and Cassie are wearing those suits from the other issue I talked about with the bat signals on them. So Cassie's wearing her old black Batgirl costume, and it just feels very classic Batman in those scenes with them fighting to save Gotham and beating up on Punchline. But ultimately, the problem with this story has been the problem the entire time that, I never thought I'd say this, it kind of needed to be Snyder length, like 12 issues. Because it just...
No shit.
It just moved too quickly. There was no groundwork laid. Everything happened very fast. Like, all of a sudden, the Joker had control of Wayne Enterprises, and all of a sudden, he had control of Gotham City, and all of a sudden, it was over. And it's just like this amount of story of this supposed import. You need to really make it seem earned, and it just happened so quickly, and then it was over so quickly. And it really felt like it needed to be either seeded in other stories earlier, or you really needed to give it like the full 12-issue treatment. It just one of them, because it just didn't.
Would you have wanted to read that for that long?
If it was done well, sure.
Would it?
This much going on, it just felt like all of a sudden it was happening, and all of a sudden it was over, and that's not enjoyable either because all these big things are happening, and it's like, wait, how did the Joker take over the company in one issue?
Well, it sounds like
how did he start running the city in one issue? It's just like it didn't just because he has a lot of money.
One option is to make it longer, and the other thing is to take some out, kill your babies. Like that's the hard part.
Yeah, well,
I didn't read it. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it just didn't work at any level really, other than the art, and which is
that's always sad.
And the thing is, like, it's issue 100. Who cares? It's not, who knows what issue number it really is. It doesn't.
It's not really issue 100.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So that's whatever.
Happy anniversary! It's just Thursday. Happy anniversary!
Yeah, it is what it is.
Do you know what's delightful?
What's that?
Spy Island #2.
Spy Island was delightful. Spy
Island has been a real treat. I'm going to keep saying this. I think Chelsea Kane is a real fun voice in sort of that modern Matt Fraction Hawkeye sort of mold, but with her own perspective on it. Primarily all-female creative team on this outside of the letters. It's just a beautiful, fun book. There's it's the same thing she's doing in Man-Eaters with those sort of ads.
Yep.
That sort of give you that sort of look at the culture. It is not serious, but with weight. It's funny because there's I don't know that it's a supernatural element, but there's killer mermaids and krakens and stuff. Yep. But in this, it's just sort of part of life there. It's fun. There was actually a plot reveal in this that I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That concerned the mime I really dug it. It was one of the last things that concerned the mime. And I'm leaving that right there. You can do whatever you want with those words.
Yeah. No, I thought this was super fun.
Yeah. Beautifully designed. When I see these are out, I get very excited, I get very happy.
You know, if I was like putting them into rankings, this would be my top grouping of books this week.
Yeah. Yep.
I really enjoyed Norse Mythology. I'm sorry, Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology #1, which was
you got to put his name on there with a title like that.
Which is funny because it's just Thor. Which is funny because Thor is just Norse mythology. It's the same. It's the same thing, the same stories, the same characters. So it's just Thor stories, kind of. I mean, it's the same thing. It's so
yeah.
You know, here what really drew me to this was he had a top shelf flight of artists doing these 3 short stories. He had P. Craig Russell, who used to be a big name, doesn't really do a lot of work anymore, but when he does, it's a big deal. And then Mike Mignola, and then the last story is by Jerry Ordway. 3 artists who you don't see very much. At least I don't see very much. And it looked terrific. The stories were fun. Mignola's story was great. I loved the story about the wisdom well with Odin, and that's how he lost his eye. I didn't know. I'm not a Norse mythology expert. I didn't know about how Odin lost his eye, and that was interesting. And then I love the way that Mignola draws lightning bolts. It just looks so craggy and not real. Mm-hmm. It's great. And then Jerry Ordway's story about Loki cursing Sif, who is Thor's wife, to lose her beautiful blonde hair, and angry redhead Thor shows up to beat him up and wants the hair back, and it's actually going to continue in issue 2. I thought this was really fun to read. I liked reading it a lot. It
was fun. It was beautiful. And like, I was looking at the artists and having fun with it. You know what you're going to get with P. Craig Russell. That's his thing. And you know what you're going to get with Mike Mignola. And then I kind of forgot about the last bit, and I finished it, and I was like, wait, who is that? And I was like, Ordway. Hell yeah.
Still got it.
Totally got it. I guess one of the other things that I just found really interesting about it is that it was kind of devoid. It's like Neil Gaiman was writing it, but it was kind of devoid of any stylism. It was very like, here's the thing. And in the skill that he brought to it was just distilling that stuff down into things that are easily
co-written by him and P. Craig Russell.
Oh, there you go. But also, I mean, the other thing is I like how much of the Thor Marvel version is pretty close to this stuff. Like they didn't like what Kirby and Lee, they just did these stories for a while, and Marvel's actually done a pretty good job of just keeping that there the whole time. Like it didn't get so far away from the original, which is really interesting. It's a long history. It's 50 years.
They hew pretty close to real mythology in Thor somehow. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Which, by the way, tells you how great those stories are.
Yeah.
We're still getting Loki stories out of this whole thing, and the characterization is all right on. So that's fun.
Isn't Gaiman doing like a Norse book?
I mean, that's what American Gods was.
No, I think he's doing like an actual Norse book.
Oh,
but
probably.
Maybe I could also be wrong.
He loves gods, that guy.
Amazing Spider-Man #49 or 850.
Guess what hand gesture I'm doing right now?
You know what? Fucking embrace your numbering or don't.
It's really it's ridiculous.
So this was a sort of giant, almost 90 pages, tour de force with Ryan Ottley, Humberto Ramos, and Mark Bagley doing the art. And the thing is, on the one hand, I really enjoyed the story of Peter and Norman having to survive together through this onslaught of Sin Eaters, and then Juggernaut. But then, on the other hand, it pretty heavily references and dives deep into the thing I most hated about modern Spider-Man, which is the totem spider web of life thing. Mm-hmm. And I hate that part. I really hate that part. I think if there's one hero you don't make into some sort of mystical totem, it's Spider-Man. You take away the everymanness of Peter Parker and what he did and his choices when you make him like this thing, this mystical thing. And so then the other characters are in the web of, the fucking web of life, the other spider characters watching him. It's just, I hate that.
I gotta say that I didn't love this. I had a hard time with the squaring of Norman Osborn and Spider-Man working together. Like, it was kind of okay for a while, but I just couldn't. I feel like they couldn't quite settle on what the tone of that was, because it was like, this is so wrong. This is kind of fun. This is, and I guess that works, but for some reason it didn't.
I think that is the tone.
I know.
He's conflicted about it.
I know. I didn't love it. That's my point. When you have all the Spider-Man people standing around, I just was like, this shouldn't be. There's too many of these people. Yeah. And even if I like some of the characters on their own, it's not Batman. I don't think it works. I think Peter Parker works better. I think you were saying this. Like, he works better on his own. He's got like a little like, I don't fit in this. Mm-hmm. And if there's 8 people following him around like he's their uncle and they're all spider versions, that's less good, I think. Also, Bagley. There's one lady with the glasses, And the glasses look dumb to begin with, whoever that is, the spider totem lady, but they look different in every panel. It's like, come on.
Maybe that's your superpower.
Yeah, okay.
Also, Juggernaut underneath his helmet doesn't have a helmet-shaped head. He has a regular head.
I was very confused about that.
And so when Sin Eater absorbs his powers, he suddenly has a Juggernaut helmet-shaped head. And I was like, but that's not what's going on under the helmet. He's just a regular dude who's giant and strong, but he's not has a weird Juggernaut helmet head. I guess they were using it as a visual metaphor to show that this guy's got the Juggernaut's power, but man, that's just not what he looks like.
I didn't understand who that was. They kept calling him. I know, but why was Sin Eater?
When he shoots them with a gun, he also gets their powers.
Oh, so right. Okay.
He neuters them, takes their powers away, and he absorbs them.
I forgot about that part.
So he shoots Juggernaut and gets his powers.
But he had the outfit and everything.
Well, he's wearing the Sin Eater outfit. He just has the head of Juggernaut.
Whatever. Yeah, I know what you mean, though. I
do love the way Otley draws Green Goblin, though.
Absolutely, 100%. I love the Green Goblin has a satchel, and they've never gotten away from it. Like, that's a terrible idea. You need a third stabilizing strap for that thing.
Oh, especially if it's supposedly full of pumpkin bombs. It's like Mary Poppins' bag. It's just infinite pumpkin bombs in that satchel, which I love.
You're right. Not even one would fit in that thing.
Maybe two.
No, but like the lines would be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's comic logic. I don't care.
I really like how they've stuck, don't redesign that costume ever. Ever.
Well, they tried when the movies came out. He became Mecha Goblin, and that was terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It may have been more realistic, but it was terrible.
No one needs it.
I'm not enjoying this anymore, I got to say.
You going to stop reading it?
I want this part to be over.
850 is a good jumping off point.
Nah, I want this story to be over, and I want you to get back to what it was before, because what it was before was Spider-Man that I was into.
Spider-Man, Marvel's Snapshot. Is that the way the title goes? It's the other way around. Yeah, it's Spider-Man, Marvel's Snapshot.
Yeah.
And so I read Howard Chaykin, Spider-Man, and I was like, well, that's going to be interesting. And Howard Chaykin said, fuck that, I'm not doing a Spider-Man story. And I thought it was fine because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, he did a great story about a criminal who didn't make a great criminal, didn't want to be a super criminal, had a little hard time getting out, and then did. And I was like, I was like, oh, let's have a win, because all these things always turn into morality plays about how, once you're in it, you can't get out.
His buddy tried to pull that on him, but it didn't work. He was like, no, I'm going to leave. I also couldn't tell.
Ronnie was a creep.
I couldn't tell what era this was taking place in, because it was like kind of 80s-esque hairstyles and clothing, but then at one point they mentioned how many years superheroes had been around, and I did the math, and that would have put him in 1974 or 5 or something. That definitely wasn't how the characters looked.
I think it was funny that his dream girl that he met was not that attractive.
No. She had bad hair. She wore a headscarf.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It was good, but all that made it good. I liked that stuff about it.
What I liked about it was the idea that it's the Marvel things. All these regular people living in the city. The device he uses is that the news radio is constantly talking about the superhero fights, and people are
Bill McNeil here.
People are complaining about it. And so in the background, you were constantly seeing superheroes fighting villains on the rooftops as the characters walked on a date or whatever, but it was never part of the story, really. There's the one page 20 where, the guy and the girl are walking, and in the first panel you see Daredevil and somebody fighting in the background, and they're back again at the bottom. They're just in the background. They're not part of the story. There's only really one part with Spider-Man. It sort of interacts with the characters, and it's important, but not the big deal. And it's just, I thought it was really fun. And great Chaykin, I thought.
Yeah, good Chaykin. It was fun.
Some of the better Chaykin in a while.
Good to read.
And then finally, Locke and Key and Pale Battalions Go #2, Joe Hill, Gabriel Rodriguez. I just wanted to mention because this is a short 3-part story. If you recall in the first issue, Kid uses the power of the keys to open a door to go help fight World War I, and he takes some of the magical keys with him. So in this issue, we jump a little bit ahead, and he's been using the keys effectively as this sort of, not a secret agent, but he's in the shadows. He doesn't want people to know he's this magical person using the keys. Unfortunately, it all goes wrong for him towards the end, in which he gets injured and has to escape and uses the key to open a door back to his home. But he doesn't close it all the way, so a bunch of German soldiers follow him, and so now they've appeared into his house in Maine. They're in Maine, and they're very confused, and they accidentally kill somebody in the house. So it was a nice little twist, and also, up until the very end, we're sort of following these 2 German soldiers whose job it is to investigate what has happened on missions. And they're becoming very disturbed and disillusioned with the German government and army because they've discovered the Germans are using chlorine gas in violation of various treaties. And when they complain to their boss, the boss is like, fuck that, we're going to use gas on the French. You can see the mentality turning towards Nazism, even if it hasn't been called that yet. It was a really good issue. I think you'd actually really like this, Josh, even if you know nothing about Locke and Key. You don't really need to.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. There was a lot of books we could have talked about. I would have loved to talk about Black Widow. There was a lot of great comics this week. But we have to move on. We're already long. We're already way long.
Yes.
Patron Pick. Patreon.com/iFanboy. So you can go to vote to add a book to the rundown. This week, by a very slim margin, American Vampire 1976, number 1, beat out American Ronin, number 1. American Vampire 1976 is by Scott Snyder, Raphael Albuquerque, Dave McCaig, Steve Wands. And this is the first new issue of American Vampire in I don't know how long. A book that we really loved back when it was coming out. This current issue is from Black Label because Vertigo doesn't exist anymore. And my biggest problem, as a big American Vampire fan, which I am, is I had no idea what was going on or who anybody was because it's been so long.
I recognize the names.
Oh, sure. I mean, Skinner
right,
Sweet and Pearl and Jim Book. I have vague recollections of their backgrounds, their relationships. I mean, this is pretty heavily in the mythology. They're looking for some sort of cure, and a recap page would have helped. Something.
I do not believe that in comics, one should have to go back and reread what had come before. Because A, I don't know where that shit is.
Yeah.
And B, that's not the nature of the medium. And so you need a TV show that comes back
previously
from
on.
a season. Is a previous. This needed a recap page in a big way, at least a rundown of characters,
or written in such a way that gives you that information in the story. I mean,
yes.
This is not a book that came out like 6 months after the last issue or a year after. This is
like a half a decade.
This is years and years ago. You gotta help me here. Gotta help me here. Again, big fan. I own Vampire Collections. I loved the book when it was coming out. It was pick of the week a lot.
Yeah.
But I was not 100% lost, but I was like 80% lost.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We needed some help, and I think that it owed us some help and didn't give it.
Did Skinner Sweet give up his powers?
I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember. Did it happen in between the stories?
You know what else? I didn't even remember. I didn't remember the timeline. Where I don't know what year we were in when we stopped. I was like, did the old book, was it before 1976?
I thought it was present day.
I did too.
I don't know. It was hard. I mean, I know you don't love Albuquerque. I'm a big fan of Albuquerque's art. I thought it looked great.
Yeah, that's all true. I mean, but the thing is, it's important is we're going into talking about this. And yes, I'm guessing if we were very, very familiar with all the material that had come before, then we would have a different take on it. But we are going to talk about how we experience this in real life.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important.
Yeah, so Skinner Sweet's 76. He's like Evel Knievel or Johnny Blaze. He's a stunt driver and almost suicidal in a way because he's been around a long time. He was one of their first vampires turned. And
he misses being that. It seems like so. He's even more frustrated.
And so then to the side, there's some people looking for some sort of cure thing. That was the part where I was really lost. And then, this guy shows up to Travis Kidd. I don't remember that guy at all. He's a DJ vampire hunter, and that was cool.
Wasn't he the one who was like the Elvis guy?
Probably.
From the 50s one? But that's as much as I remembered.
I thought using sunlight to bouncing it off the disco ball and disco full of vampires was a fun device. I thought that was a fun scene.
Didn't that happen in one of the Blade movies?
I had never seen any of the Blade movies. I saw the first one. Yeah, and then there's a fight, and then there's a whole thing, and then Pearl saves Skinner, and then Jim Book shows up, and I was like, I don't remember any of
I remembered who Pearl was. I was like, oh, she had the husband, and he got old, and she didn't, and there was that, but she was kind of a good guy, but also she's a badass killer vampire thing. Yeah. And here's the thing I liked. I liked that he lives in an old Pullman car that he stole.
Yeah, that was cool.
100 years earlier. Was it buried underground?
Yes.
How did everybody else get in?
It wasn't totally buried. The door was...
There's a hatch.
The hatch was available.
Yeah, it's fine. I like that you have to enter and leave through a hatch. That's very 80s kid movie cool. We were all about hatches.
We all just wanted hatches and ladders.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking about it, we really liked hidden underground bunkers with hidden... And I was like, oh, right, the Cold War.
Yeah. So it's tough to really rate this because... I thought it was well done. I thought it was one of the better Scott Snyder comics in a while. in terms of storytelling and action and characters. And I love the Albuquerque art, but again, I spent the whole issue going, wait, what? When did that happen? I don't remember.
I think that part of the reason that I started moving away from the series in general, because it was inconsistently released.
Yeah.
At least it seemed it. I can't remember even long enough, but it started to lose focus for me. We started to jump around again. I mean, this is a little like what's happened. We were talking about Marvel's numbering, but like there were mini series, and I just do a series. Do a straight series with numbers. You can jump around. I will use this example because I'll use for everything is, Preacher. Actually, not true. Those were miniseries. I keep thinking, but okay. If you read the books of Preacher, they're put into an order. If you I didn't read them in issues, so I can't. Maybe that's a thing. But when you read the trades, they put them in an order, so you get the Santa Killer stuff in there. You get the New Orleans sort of miniseries in there. It just reads better like that. Maybe this reads great in trades. Maybe how they did that, but I don't feel like I have a sense of direction. Like we can't tell. Neither of us can tell you what time and when anything took place. Like I remember when I think back, I can see splashes of like, oh, there was stuff that took place in the 30s, and there was stuff that took place in the 50s,
in the Old
and
West.
There was modern stuff. I just remember like, well, what's the story? Like, is there a single driving story? Or are we doing a universe where there are splinters? Except each of the stories seem to have the same characters involved. They were Skinner Sweet is in all of them.
It would have been nice for an old school comic, roll call page.
Yeah.
Here are the characters and a brief 2-line about them and who they are, where they are right now.
I will go even further. You could have put it at the end because maybe you don't want to spoil the thing for people who do remember.
Yeah, fine.
Like I get that. Like, oh, I don't want to. It's like when you watch the credits of a show and it says somebody's name, and you're like, oh, that person's coming back. You don't want to have that ruined. I get that. Put it at the end though. You got to be somewhere. I need, or put a URL. Like go here to get the thing.
Right.
Something. Help us out.
So that's gonna make this tough. American Vampire 1976, number 1 ratings. Ratings on American Vampire 1976, number 1 out of 5.
3.
I think 3. I was going 2.5 of that felt too low, so I think 3 is the way to go.
I think you're right. I think it's a good comic.
It was a good comic. It just was confusing for various reasons. I was trying to think, well, if this was like the first issue of a book you've never heard of before, would this have been successful? But it wouldn't have been because the reveals depended on you knowing who these characters were. Like, oh, it's Jim Book. You're supposed to go, oh, right, Jim. Or the other guy in the middle, the Elvis guy.
I generally couldn't remember is who were the vampires and who were the vampire hunters. And I think they were all vampires. And yeah.
We're all vampires.
And then we were all vampires.
Patreon.com/iFanboy.
From America.
You can go and you can vote to add a book to the rundown. Everyone who's a patron can do that. But if you're a patron at the $5 or higher level, you get your own superpower live on the show as we're way over. Let's thank Mark Driscoll. Mark, you know how like a magician will like pull like flowers out of his sleeve and make it look like they've come out of his hand? Yes. Well, Mark doesn't pull it out of his sleeve. He actually does manifest in a magic way tissues. Oh. And now I'm already remembering giving a similar power, and that's just the way it is, Chris.
Let's not make this about him.
Chris is listen, I was just down in his office the other day. I went downstairs, went past Lisa at the front desk, went past the legal team, took a right at the design team, went over to the analytics team, which Chris heads, and he does a great job there, and everyone in his team loves him. But I'm just saying, I just want to say, I'm impressed. Thank you. If that's a superpower, I might write that down. That was lovely. I just saying, sometimes you need a couple of guys who can manifest tissues, and Mark is one of them. Any kind of tissues, the cool ones, the ones that have aloe in them. You gotta be careful though; those can lead to breakouts. Like, sure, it's nice at the time, but you don't do them all. You don't always, but maybe just the one time because you're really raw on the nose. But or just regular tissues. You just need to wipe something down. You don't need to. Yeah. You don't need a whole production. Premium though. They don't fall apart. Right. They can take a licking and keep on ticking. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's good. They're not dollar store tissues. No. No. They're quality. CPH. It's very specific. It's a very specific one, and I don't even know if he'll get a chance to use it. But if somebody finds the cure for cancer and they lose it, this is the guy you want to call. He'll find it? Yes, he will. Only the cure for cancer? He won't find any lost item, just the cure for cancer? Ring, ring. CPH here. CPH. I've got a problem.
I had the cure for cancer, and I lost it. I'll be right over.
Wow. So he's got a very specific skill, and he's just waiting for the moment.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. When it is his hour, it's going to be a big deal.
So, in reality, the cure for cancer probably won't be discovered in the jungle by Sean Connery. Instead, it's probably somebody's computer will have a
what are you referring to?
What I'm saying is...
is there a movie?
What I'm saying is somebody at MIT will call up, and not MIT, some actual medical place, but that's all I can think of at the moment. It's very early. They'll call CPH and go, I accidentally hit backspace.
Yes.
And lost the screen and hadn't saved it, and CPH will run over and run some magic on the computer, and the computer will reappear.
Well, no, but like if the hard drive dies or something.
I didn't back it up.
It will. Yeah.
At this very important medical facility, we don't actually run backups.
Data recovery. It's all about data recovery.
But only cancer related.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks, CPH and Mark. And I'm not going to run through the whole thing because we're long, but Patreon.com/iFanboy is the best place to help. iFanboy.threadless.com is where you can get merch. iFanboy.com/support. And iFanboy.com/Amazon is where you can go help us directly. We thank everyone who does all those things, especially as we hit towards the end of the year. We appreciate everyone who keeps the show going. And we're skipping emails because we're super long, but contact@ifanboy.com is where you can email us in and write and get or email on the show. We had some really good emails this week, so we're looking forward to getting them on the show next week, hopefully on a week with fewer comics we want to talk about. It's been, it was nice to have a week where there was like, there's more comics to talk about than we have time on the show, which is a nice problem to have. Let's take it home, Josh.
Yeah, if you like our other shows, the things that we do ancillary to this, I will have just released a Talksplode, which is our creator interview podcast with Gene Luen Yang, a lovely, delightful guy is what he is. And I say that about a lot of them, but that's because I only want to talk to lovely, delightful people. He just started doing a Shang-Chi series for Marvel. He released Dragon Hoops this year, and it's a wonderful graphic novel.
Writer of our book of the year last year, Superman Smashes the Klan. Our series of the year.
Yep. Just a really nice conversation with a great dude with a ton of talent who has done more than you might remember. Just fingers all over comics and just all of its sort of thoughtful, nice stuff.
And a certified genius.
Certified MacArthur Grant genius.
We got a lot of shows coming up.
That's a first for Talksplode.
In fact, this month in October, we're going to have a special edition show coming out every single week. It's a big month for shows. So we had Josh's Talksplode. This coming week, we have our Booksplode show in which we talk about Pulp, the original graphic novel from Image Comics, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. The week after that, we're going to have our Mediasplode show, where I believe the main topic will be Ted Lasso, but we haven't set it up yet. But that's definitely going to be talked about in the show.
Regardless.
The week after that, the Animated Brain Trust is going to discuss Batman, Death in the Family. So that's 4 extra shows this month, including the 4 Pick of the Weeks. And then, if that wasn't enough, October 24th, we're having our monthly hangout that's open for everybody still because we're still all under lockdown. We missed it in September. We just let it slip through our fingers like the cure for cancer. So to make up for that, our hangout's going to be 2 hours this month. So October 24th, 2 hours long. And when you couple that with the 2-hour pre-show happy hour hangout, that's 4 hours. It's actually longer than we did the 750 episode. So if you're looking
doing
at
a 2-hour hangout ahead of time?
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I need you to be able to be with it by the time we get to the actual show. That's the kids like that, but
I'm not going to be that I can't be that. I can't. So anyway,
you won't make it.
The point is 4 hours of hangout time, October 24th. It's also my birthday, so we're celebrating that as well.
Oh yeah, that's why that date looks familiar.
We're celebrating my birthday with 4 hours of hangouts.
Can you be eating barbecue while we do the show?
Man, I wish. Ooh, that's a great idea.
It is a great idea.
Oh.
I want sauce all over your face.
I was trying to figure out what food, because you got to pick a food that's going to absorb some alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So I was leaning towards pizza, but man, barbecue. There's a barbecue place near me. I wonder if it's open. I'll find out.
We have to wrap this show. You have to have this moment later. I'm sorry.
iFanboy.com. You've introduced the idea of barbecue into my head. iFanboy.com is where you can find all those shows. Again, eight shows plus the hangout this month in October. Find out where the pick of the week is before the show comes out by liking Facebook.com/iFanboy or following @iFanboy on Twitter or @iFanboy Comics on Instagram, which also features the Best of the Week in Panels feature. I actually cut a panel out while we were talking because I was like, oh, I like that panel. I meant to showcase that one. So those will all be Instagram. And then individually, we are @CSKilpatrick and @JA Flanagan, both of only Instagram. That's the whole place you can find us. You can find us there. Also, you can subscribe and like our new YouTube page at youtube.com/iFanboy. I don't think it's called a page. That's how old we are.
I think it is.
Keep up to date on old video show uploads. That was unlocked by the patrons. We're uploading all of our old video shows from 13 years ago. And this past week, we had Josh's pick of the week for Hellblazer, which you can go check
bench?
out. No. That was the mini we talked about Hellblazer. This was
okay. Yeah.
We did our picks of the week, and then we had the comic book continuity debate. I believe I was fervently anti-continuity, and Ron was pro, and you were somewhere in the middle. And then finally, spotlight on Preacher. We did a whole show about Preacher, so it was very much a Vertigo week between Hellblazer and Preacher. But you can find that.
I can tell you right now what my thesis was. It's a Western story about friendship.
YouTube.com/iFanboy. And then we just uploaded a bunch of episodes to sort of take us through the year to put into the system, and there's some great ones coming up. So I'll be able to make sure to highlight those as they come out. If you haven't checked out those shows, if you're new to iFanboy, you've never seen our old video shows, go to youtube.com/iFanboy, subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything. We also put the Pick of the Week show up there every week as well.
All right, so I'm going to do this Micro Machine style.
All right.
Speaking of old, if you dig the show, write us a review, leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts or where you get your podcast. Better yet, still tell your friends about us. If you want to mention us on social media, that's also pretty good too. And then you can help spread the iFanboy love that way. I am Josh, and you are?
Connor.
Thank you. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. That's not political. Do those things. Bye.